For us to begin with, may we request Rear Admiral J. Tarriela, Philippine Coast Guard, for his special address and congratulatory toast. Let's give him a round of applause.
Good evening, everyone. Distinguished guests, esteemed members of the Diplomatic Corps, of course, Ambassador Brown of the Australian Embassy, the legal and academic community, fellow workers in the government, our honored international experts, ladies and gentlemen, isang magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Just a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a Coast Guard officer. I'm not here to debate about the UNCLOS or the international law. I was just asked by the Commandant to deliver the speech right now and to also lead the opening. So probably tomorrow, I'm going to respond to some of your questions if we're going to talk about the transparency and its impact to the Chinese aggression. It is a privilege to join you this evening at the National Symposium on the Law of the Sea in the West Philippine Sea. As I said, Admiral Gavan is currently engaged in an important undertaking, but rest assured, the Philippine Coast Guard is one with the nation in commemorating the 10th anniversary of the arbitral award and in fighting for our rights and interests in the West Philippine Sea. Allow me first to commend the organizers of this timely and important initiative. At a time when the Philippines continues to face serious challenges in its maritime domain, this gathering serves as a critical national purpose to strengthen public understanding, sharpen legal clarity, and build a broader national consensus on the defense of our maritime rights and interests. In the West Philippine Sea, the contest is not only taking place at sea, it is also taking place in the information space, in the legal space, and in the battle for hearts and minds. And that is why transparency matters. The Philippine Coast Guard is fully committed to championing transparency in the West Philippine Sea. We believe that the Filipino people deserve to know the truth about what is happening in our waters clearly, accurately, and without distortion. Transparency is not propaganda. Transparency is not provocation. Transparency is the responsible exposure of facts. It is how we document coercion, how we inform our people, and how we ensure that no unlawful act at sea is hidden behind ambiguity, silence, or manufactured narratives. It is also how we deny space to disinformation and malign influence operations. By collecting, validating, and aggregating information, my office, the West Philippine Sea Transparency Group, helps the government to better understand the developments at sea, supports more informed policy responses, and enables the public to appreciate the true nature and scale of Chinese coercive activities within our own maritime domain. Thank you to our free, independent press for becoming our partners in amplifying the truth. If we want to achieve national consensus on policy issues, we must ensure that our people understand clearly and unambiguously the legal basis of the Philippine position, the rights that belongs to us under international law, and the difference between lawful maritime entitlements and unlawful coercive assertion. That understanding cannot remain confined to Manila. It must reach every region in the world, every campus, every courtroom, every newsroom, and every community. Because when disinformation spreads, confusion follows. And when confusion spreads, national resolve weakens. That is why this symposium is very important. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is not an abstract legal document. For the Philippine Coast Guard, UNCLOS is deeply practical. It guides our work in maritime safety, marine environmental protection, and maritime law enforcement. It informs our responsibilities at sea and reinforces the rules-based order that allows nations, regardless of size, to coexist with predictability, respect, and justice. And this is why, in the Philippine Coast Guard, we fully support this symposium, because the defense of our maritime rights does not belong to uniformed services alone. It also requires lawyers, legal scholars, educators, public servants, journalists, and informed citizens. In every corner of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, there must be an informed legal professional. Indeed, an informed Filipino, ready and able to explain the truth, debunk disinformation, and stand firmly on the side of international law and our national interests. In that sense, all of you here tonight are part of that mission. And for that, the Philippine Coast Guard, on behalf of the Commandant, thank all of you. Tonight, we also offer our warmest congratulations to Dr. Jeffrey Ordaniel, Attorney J. Batong Bakal, Dean Jeremy Gatdula, and all the institutions and partners who made this symposium possible. We also extend our sincere gratitude to the distinguished experts who have joined us from abroad, Professor Natalie Klein, Professor Clive Schofield from Australia, Dr. Bill Hayton from the United Kingdom, and Dr. Christian from Germany. I might have trouble pronouncing your last name, Christian, so I just stick with Dr. Christian for sharing your expertise. May I now invite everyone to raise your glasses. May this symposium help shape a more informed citizenry, a stronger legal community, and a more united national resolve in defense of the West Philippine Sea. To the truth, to the law of the sea, to the Filipino nation, and to the enduring defense of our maritime rights. Cheers. Maraming pong salamat.
Rear Admiral J. Tristan Tarriela, Ambassador Innes Brown of Australia, Professor J. Batong Bakal of the University of the Philippines, Dean Jeremy Gatdula of the University of Asia and the Pacific School of Law, Justice Antonio Carpio, distinguished colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, magandang hapon po. Almost every country in our part of the world is grappling with the same question. How do we deal with China? For the Philippines, that question is especially urgent. Not only because China is a major power and an important economic actor, but also because every single day, China is actively challenging our sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea. That is precisely why our national response cannot be confused, reactive, or fragmented. We organized this symposium with a very clear purpose: to strengthen legal literacy on the law of the sea so that we are better equipped to push back against disinformation and malign influence operations in our own respective circles and communities, and to help build a stronger, more informed national consensus on the West Philippine Sea and related China policy. A vast majority of our participants in this symposium are lawyers. For some reason, the Philippines is probably one of the most legalistic countries in the world. Are you aware of that? We always turn to the Supreme Court to decide on things. Even for national political issues, Filipinos tend to turn to their neighborhood attorneys. Minsan, kapag may mga isyong nasyonal, lagi tayong nagtatanong, ano sa tingin nyo, attorney? Tama po ba ang sinasabi niya? Pero alam natin na hindi dahil lawyer ay alam na ang issue sa West Philippine Sea. Kahit nga lawyer na at senador ka pa, pwede ring hindi talaga alam ang issue ng West Philippine Sea. So for this symposium, the first in our series of year-long public events commemorating the 10th anniversary of the Arbitral Award, we invited mostly lawyers from across the country. As Admiral Tarriela noted, you are now amplifiers of the truth. Pag tinanong kayo, ano sa tingin nyo, attorney? Tama po ba ang sinasabi ng China? Tama po ba yung 9-dash line? Moving forward, you can now answer with confidence, armed with the knowledge you gained today and what you will learn more tonight and tomorrow. Because again, the battlegrounds are not only at sea, it is also in the information space. China's information manipulation can reshape the information environment itself, creating distortions and gaps in public understanding that may ultimately lead to our people not having a shared reality, which could in turn lead to politicians making decisions that subordinate our economic and security interests to Beijing's expansionist goals. We are constantly confronted by narratives that seek to confuse our people, distort the law, and delegitimize the 2016 Arbitral Award. For example, some portray UNCLOS as Western invention, imposed on us by the West, and therefore somehow optional and irrelevant. But we know from this morning, you have all gained new knowledge about the Law of the Sea Convention and maritime zones, and we also know that every claimant state in the South China Sea is a party to this convention, including China. It is important to emphasize that the Law of the Sea Convention was one of the first, if not the first, major international legal instruments that the People's Republic of China negotiated at the United Nations. China, along with the Philippines and other states, contributed to the development of this treaty, as noted by Professor Jay earlier today. When our neighborhood lawyers, law school educators, public servants, and citizens understand how maritime entitlements are generated, what rights coastal states are entitled to under international law, and what the 2016 Arbitral Award actually decided, then this information becomes much easier to expose and much harder to sustain. And there is no better person to help us understand our claim in the West Philippine Sea than someone who has done so much to defend the truth, the law, and our national interests in this very space. Our keynote speaker this evening needs little introduction. Justice Antonio Carpio has been one of the Philippines' most principled and most authoritative voices on the West Philippine Sea. Through his public service, legal scholarship, and tireless public education efforts, he has helped countless Filipinos better understand the legal and historical foundation of our offshore territorial claims and maritime rights and the importance of defending them. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Senior Associate Justice Antonio Carpio.
Yun na yung keynote.
Jeffrey said, okay, I accept, but you have to explain the significance of this. So I'm here tonight to explain why this map is important. This map is the last official map of Philippine territory during the Spanish regime. It is the most complete and most detailed map of Philippine territory during the Spanish regime. You can see there Bajo Masinloc with deaf soundings. You can see the entire Spratlys with deaf sounding. All the high tide features in the Spratlys are here with deaf soundings with names. And until I found an original copy of this, we only had high-resolution downloads from the Ministry of Defense of Spain and from the auction houses. This map was made by Captain Claudio Montero. He was a Spanish naval officer who spent most of his naval career in the Philippines. He was appointed the first head of the Philippine Hydrographic Commission during the Spanish regime, and under his command he had 2 ships. The 2 ships went around the Philippines to conduct deaf soundings. And how did they do that? There's this plummet. There's a lead attached to a thin rope. You drop the lead, and you can measure the depths of the rocks to guide navigators. And if you look at the Pedro Murillo Velarde map of 1734, you will see Panacot, that's Scarborough Shoal. In the 1808 map, you see here Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal. This was the survey made by Captain Riquelme. And this is the 1875 map, the Bajo de Masinloc or Scarborough Shoal with deaf soundings. So that's the, since 1734, we already claimed Scarborough Shoal, and it's in this map, and it has been continuously carried in all the official maps of Spain of Philippine territory during the Spanish regime. And if you go to the Calayan Island group, this is the present-day Namria map. These are the polygonal lines of PD 5096. If you compare that with the 1875 map, this is the edge of Philippine territory in the 1875 map. You have Thitu, that's Pag-asa, and Pag-asa is here, the edge of Philippine territory under present-day Namria map. You have Loita, that's Kota, and you have Ituaba, we call that Ligao. And this is the exclusive economic zone, edge of exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. So more or less they coincide. And when the Americans signed the Treaty of Paris with Spain in 1898, and this was sent to the US Senate for ratification, there was actually a map attached to the Treaty of Paris, and this is the map. And these are the lines of the Treaty of Paris in that map. It includes the large areas of the Spratlys, and then it turns here to the right to include the territory of the Sultan of Sulu. So this is the map that the US senators considered when they ratified the Treaty of Paris of 1898. In their mind, the treaty ceded also to the US the Spratlys. But there was a big problem because the Treaty of Paris had in the text the geographical coordinates of the lines. If you connect the lines based on the text of the treaty, the lines do not turn sharply to the left. To exclude the Spratlys, turn sharply to the right to exclude Cagayan de Sulu and Cebuto. So there was a big variance between the text and the map attached to the treaty. Of course, the text will prevail. And the Spanish garrison here in Cagayan de Sulu and Cebuto refused to vacate. When the Americans told them the Philippines has been ceded to the US, they said no. If you look at the lines, if you connect all the lines, we are outside the cession. So the Americans had to talk again to the Spaniards to clarify that what was ceded to the U.S. by Spain included all the islands of the Philippine archipelago. And so the U.S. Secretary of State wrote the Spanish ambassador, and he said that our intention was that all the territorial sovereignty or title of Spain in that part of the Western Pacific should be ceded to us. That was our intention when we signed the treaty. And the Spanish ambassador replied that we lost the war. You dictated to us the terms of the treaty. You dictated the geographical coordinates, and what are excluded from those coordinates still remain with Spain, under the sovereignty of Spain. So there was this acrimonious exchange of notes between the U.S. and Spain. And finally, the Americans got fed up, so he said, okay, to cut this debate short, we will pay you $50,000 more on top of the $20 million that we paid for the Treaty of Paris, to clarify that all other islands of the Philippine archipelago are ceded to us also. The Spaniards said, no, that's too little. So the Americans doubled the offer, and the Spaniards said, we agree to sign the clarificatory treaty. And that, the Spanish ambassador in Washington sent a message to his boss in Madrid. He said, there is only one article in this treaty, and it is drawn in such a manner as to include other islands outside the limits of the Treaty of Paris. So clear intention was the second treaty will include all other islands of the Philippine archipelago outside the treaty lines. And so the treaty exactly says that. Spain relinquishes to the U.S. any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines, as if they have been included, expressly included within those limits in the Treaty of Paris. So it even retroacted. So in 1938, the Philippines was already run by the Commonwealth, manned by Filipinos, and they said, some country might claim Scarborough Shoal. Let us put a marker there to show that that is Philippine territory. And somebody said, but it is outside the treaty lines. Oh, then we will ask the Secretary of State of the U.S. to clarify, is Scarborough part of Philippine territory? And the reply is this: because there are no other claimants, the shoal should be regarded as included among the islands ceded to the U.S. in the Treaty of Washington of 1900. That was the treaty that clarified that all other islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines are also ceded to the U.S. So that's very clear that all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines should be ceded. And the Americans were so enamored with the 1875 map, of course they had to discard their own map, the one that they hurriedly cobbled together to annex to the treaty, because it was wrong. So they adopted the 1875 map. They adopted this map as the U.S. Map showing Philippine territory. So even before the signing of the Treaty of Washington of 1900, they already adopted the first edition, then the second edition, and then the third edition, and finally the fourth edition. So if you visited Manila in the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, you visit a Philippine government office or a U.S. military office, you will see this map as the map of Philippine territory. Because this is really the map that was shown all over the country, that this is the map of Philippine territory. But of course, during World War II, this was the Japanese destroyed all of the maps. So in that famous case of Island of Palmas, the lawyers will know this. Spain discovered Islas Palmas. It's an island of the southern part of the Philippines, facing the Philippine Sea. Spain discovered that and put it in the map of 1875. It's here. But Spain never returned to the island. And the Dutch from Indonesia went to the island and signed a treaty with the locals, about 700 people lived in that island, and the Datu, the chieftain of that island, pledged their allegiance to Netherlands and recognized Netherlands as their sovereign, and they flew the Dutch flag. So in 1927, Governor General Leonard Wood, here, the Governor General of the Philippines at the time, went to Mindanao aboard a steamship to visit, and when he reached the southern tip of Mindanao, he saw this island with the Dutch flag flying. He said, "Why is the Dutch flag flying there when that is part of Philippine territory?" So that triggered this famous case in international law, Island of Palmas case. And so, two countries, Netherlands and the US, submitted to arbitration the issue of who has sovereignty over Islas Palmas. And in that case, the United States submitted a memorandum. To prove that Islas Palmas belong to the Philippines, they submitted this map. Place it as exhibit. That this exhibit, the map, is both an American official and Spanish official map. It shows Island of Palmas as part of the Philippines, and they even said that this map shows the territory that was ceded by Spain to the US in the Treaty of Paris, because the Treaty of Washington retroacted. So this was submitted in that arbitration. Where is Islas Palmas? This is the map, and you can see here Islas Palmas. And today it's part of Indonesia. It has a runway there, and some people, but if you go there, there's a video in YouTube showing the people there, they speak Tagalog because they came from the Philippines, and their children study in General Santos City in Mindanao. So it was recognized by Max Huber, the arbiter, that yes, that is an official map of the Philippines under Spain and under the US, but discovery is not sufficient to perfect your title. You must show continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty. And it was the Dutch in Indonesia that showed continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty. But there was something cryptic that Max Huber said. He said, "I am deciding this in favor of Netherlands because that island, Islas Palmas, is inhabited. I would decide otherwise if it were uninhabited." But he was very cryptic. He did not explain. So we come to the next case. 3 years later, we have the Clipperton Island case. Clipperton Island is about 1,000 kilometers from Mexico. This is Clipperton Island. It is not habitable because there's no fresh water there. And in 1858, a French merchant ship commissioned by the French government went to Clipperton Island, and aboard that ship was a French naval officer who read a proclamation. Today, France claims Clipperton Island as part of the French Union, and they did not even leave a marker on the island. They just went to the nearest island with the government, that was Hawaii. They took out a 2-by-2-inch advertisement. Today, France claimed Clipperton Island, but France never returned to the island for 39 years until 1897 when Mexico claimed the island. So two states claiming the same island. They decided to submit it to arbitration by King Emmanuel of Spain, of Italy, and so this is the ruling. The fact that the island was completely uninhabited. So there were no other claimants. So since it was uninhabited, no other claimants, the title of France became complete as of the time of discovery. So this distinguished from Islas Palmas. Islas Palmas was populated. If it is not populated, not inhabited, you do not have to show peaceful and continuous display of sovereignty, because if you go ashore with a document asking the crabs to sign a pledge of allegiance, they will not sign a pledge of allegiance. So that's why the law will not require you to do the impossible. So if it is inhabited, you have to show continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty. If it is uninhabited, you don't have to show continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty. That was reiterated in the next case, Greenland. This is eastern Greenland, totally cold. You cannot live there. So the Danes, the Spanish, the king of Denmark claimed the entire Greenland in the 1700s, but they could only populate the western side because this is a warmer area. And in 1931, 32, Norway claimed the eastern part, the cold area, and so they decided to submit it to arbitration. And this was the ruling of the Permanent Court of International Justice, bearing in mind that in the 1700s, when Denmark first claimed it, there was no other claimant, and the area, the eastern Greenland, is so inaccessible, so cold, you cannot colonize it. Therefore, the title of Denmark became complete as of 1700, because that area was completely uninhabited and uninhabitable. So we go now to 1734, when Spain first claimed Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys. Scarborough Shoal was totally uninhabited at the time, even up to now. Not a single blade of grass grows there. You cannot squeeze a single drop of water from the stones. So the title of Spain became complete in 1734 when it first claimed it, under prevailing international law. And how about the Spratlys? The Spratlys were totally uninhabited in 1734 until we placed a population in the late 1970s in Pag-asa. And even the Arbitral Tribunal, in its July 2016 award, said there is no record of human habitation in the Spratlys, and the island, those islands there are not habitable because there is no water. When it rains, there's water in the aquifer, but after 3 months, the water is gone. So the ruling was all the islands in the Spratlys are not habitable. So when Spain first claimed the Spratlys in 1734, the title of Spain became complete. Yesterday, I think today, the Chinese embassy said that we cannot claim the Spratlys because we did not exercise continuous and peaceful display of sovereignty. It doesn't matter because the Spratlys were totally uninhabited at the time. We cannot go there and get the crabs and the turtles to sign a pledge of allegiance. And so we come to the 1900 Treaty of Washington. It says any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines. What is the frame of reference? Any and all islands belonging to the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines. Where is that document? Where is that map showing the islands of the Philippine archipelago lying outside the lines? This is the map. That's why this is the significance of the map. In this map, two colonial powers that ruled the Philippines for 381 years agreed that this is the map of Philippine territory. So it's very clear. And there is a principle of international law, very powerful principle. Ut possidetis juris, which means as you possess under the law, stay there. If you look at the map of Africa and South America, you will see that the boundaries are drawn in straight vertical and horizontal lines because the colonial powers were lazy. They just drew the boundaries on table survey. So a tribe may be living on both sides of the boundary, in country A and country B, but that is exactly the same tribe. There was no problem when they were both ruled by two colonial powers who had agreed that that would be the boundary. But when they became independent, they would go to war to get the people lying on the other side of the boundary. there would be perpetual boundary wars. To prevent perpetual boundary wars, international law developed the principle of uti possideris juris, to secure respect for the territorial boundaries at the moment that they achieved independence. In other words, the territorial boundaries established by the colonial powers for their colonies at the time these colonies became independent are sacrosanct. They must be respected by all states, by the parties to the treaty, by their successors in interest, and by third-party states who have not objected in a timely manner. This is a very powerful principle of international law that has preserved peace mostly in Africa, in Latin America, and this applies also to Asia. So, China is bound because China never objected to these treaties, the 1898 Treaty, the 1900 Treaty of Washington, and even the 1930 Treaty with the British, demarcating our boundary in southern Philippines. And China did not only object, it even admitted in the arbitration at The Hague. China said we are not participating, but this is our position paper. China submitted a position paper, and China quoted Philippine Constitution, that Philippine territory comprises the territory ceded to the U.S. by Spain in the Treaty of Paris of 1898, and the islands embraced in the Second Treaty of Washington of 1900, and the treaty with the UK demarcating the southern boundary in the Philippines. So, China agrees that Philippine territory is governed by the three treaties, especially the Treaty of Washington. So it cannot get out of that admission because it's a judicial admission. It's the highest form of admission. So that's why I've been recommending to the Philippines to challenge China to submit the territorial dispute to arbitration because there is no way China can win. And so I have these 4 map projects, which is almost complete. That these 4 maps must be in our National Library so that school children, when they go to the National Library, will see. And you don't have to explain to them why Scarborough Shoal and the Spratlys belong to the Philippines, referring to Calayan Island Group, because it's here in the 1734 map, in the 1808 map, in the 1875 map, and the Treaty of Paris map will arouse their curiosity. They will ask why that map is there, and they will be led to the Treaty of Washington. That there was a second treaty that we all forgot, that it's not taught to us in our schools, not even the law schools, but and even the Chinese just believe that Philippine territory is limited to the islands within the treaty lines. So I end my presentation here. Thank you for your patience and kind attention.
Thank you very much, Justice Carpio, sir. You may reserve your questions for Justice Carpio tomorrow because Justice Carpio will be joining 2 panel discussions tomorrow. Thank you very much, sir. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, dinner is served. To those participants seated at tables 1, 2, and